Hey, welcome to a Wiser Retirement podcast. Leaving a financial legacy isn't something that happens by accident. It takes planning. We've put together a guide with 7 steps to leave a financial legacy and have made it available for free on our website. This guide covers designing your legacy, estate planning, financial education, and protecting your legacy. The link to download 7 steps to leave a financial legacy is listed in the episode description, or you can go to wiserinvestor.com, scroll to the bottom, and find it there. Now on to today's episode.
Hey, before we get started today, I want to have a conversation with a new friend of ours, Jared Knox. Hey, Jared.
Hey, how's it going?
So if you go online on our Instagram or Facebook page for Wiser Wealth Management as well as a Wiser Retirement, we will have 2 pictures up. Jared's a local artist, and he did a picture of a bull and a bear behind us here on set. You can get a closer up picture of that if you go online. I guess we can throw it up on YouTube as well, Hadley, right? And so small world, but not really.
Yeah.
So you're an Auburn grad.
Right.
I grew up next door to your parents.
That's right.
Or your dad.
Yeah.
I'm much younger than him.
Uh-huh.
Just to make that clear.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Let's play that out.
And then your aunt and your uncle, obviously.
Yeah.
I know them as well, and your grandparents. And so I was surprised. For Christmas, my kids got me this painting. They said, "Hey, Dad, they're going to do this bull and a bear for you." It's from the DK Gallery here on the square. We're also on the square here in Marietta, so we're almost neighbors. And I was like, I looked at the name, didn't think much about it, and then later I was like, "Oh my gosh, I know this guy."
Yeah,
sort of.
Exactly. Well, there's not a lot of art in our family either. Like, there's some musicians, but there's nobody who can paint or draw anything like that. So people typically are shocked too.
So this is great. My thing was, hey, I want a bull and a bear. I don't want to be fighting with each other like they always do.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be serious.
Yeah.
And you did an awesome job. So
thank you.
Thanks for making the YouTube channel even better by having these 2 originals behind us. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about your personal mission and why you do this, because you're a mechanical engineer at Auburn.
That's right. Yeah.
That came out as an artist.
Yeah. So for the listeners who don't know our family and history and everything like that, my dad runs an HVAC company based out of Smyrna. And I went to Auburn for engineering and kind of was planning on following in his footsteps and maybe helping out with the business down the road. And I got about 3 years into college and started feeling called towards the mission field. And I wanted to go overseas and kind of saw myself maybe planting a church somewhere. Just taking the gospel to an unreached people group kind of became my biggest passion. And so as that started manifesting itself, I started looking for a job that would allow me to travel and kind of be my own boss and be flexible. And meanwhile, I was always able to paint. Mm-hmm. And I never knew why. And I always had a love for artwork. And like when I was a kid, Steve Penley was the biggest inspiration of mine. And he actually came to my class in like 5th grade and at Mount Perrin and talked to all of my classmates about his artwork. And so ever since then, like, he was the man. But I loved art and I loved creating art. And eventually, like I was saying, about senior year, I got to a point where I was like, okay, I need a job that'll allow me to move around. And I kind of looked around and kind of light bulbs went off. I'm like, man, this is where art comes into play. Mm-hmm. So I took a wild leap, and DK Gallery reached out to me about 3 months before I graduated and said, hey, if you want to be one of our first artists, which just means being a full-time artist for them, we've got a slot for you and we'd like to take a chance on you. And even at that point, I wasn't committed to being an artist yet. But when I got that text from Donna at DK, my heart dropped. And I was like, man, this is what I'm supposed to do. Clearly, something inside of me is excited about this. So that was a little over a year ago when I finally got started doing this. And being 1 year in, I'm enjoying it a ton. And I'm learning a lot, but I still know 1,000% this is what I need to be doing. And I feel like God has blessed my career in this first year as a platform to kind of get the missions thing going. And he's been faithful to do that. And so moving forward, I'm excited to see how art and missions kind of coincide and how we can build and mesh those things together.
So what do you enjoy drawing?
What I'm inspired by. So, I mean, stuff like that, anything in the outdoors.
Nature
Mm-hmm. Fires me up. I mean, I love hunting and fishing, just being outside. I've kind of found a little niche, painting bears and deer and fish and
Right.
stuff like that, hunting and fishing scenes. So I could do that stuff all day. And of course, like, it can get pretty frustrating if I'm painting the same animal over and over and over again. But if I see my work evolving and improving over time, it's remained pretty fun. And I am only a year in, but you feel those lulls. But if I get out and I go catch a fish in the Toccoa, or I go and I'm able to shoot a deer with my bow or something like that, the fire's back and I want to keep painting those things.
I didn't realize makes sense. You're alumni at Mount Perrin. So I
Right.
have 3 kids at Mount Perrin.
Okay.
Oldest is a junior this year,
Good deal.
freshman, and then a 5th grader.
Yeah, we were lifers in my family. I was there from kindergarten
All the way through.
Yeah. And my little sister just graduated there. She's at Auburn as of a week or 2 ago.
Okay.
So yeah, we're cleaned out of there now.
I'm sure the wallet is Auburn tuition's probably cheaper than Mount Perrin. tuitions.
Yeah, it might be. It's brutal, but I loved it there, and there's some great people there. I mean, I'm sure you know too.
Yeah,
I'm thankful
absolutely.
for them.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. And
Yeah.
again, go online. You can see this picture. If they want to, if someone wants to hire you to paint a painting for them,
Yeah,
they just contact the DK Gallery.
they can reach out to DK Gallery. I've got a website, Jared W. Knox Art. But DK, they'll plug them with me. I can't say enough about DK Gallery kind of getting me going in this field, giving me the confidence to get my career going as well, because they're the best in the business. Donna has really put a lot of faith in me being a 23-year-old artist and hanging my
Sure.
work next to some really big names like Dirk Walker and people of that caliber. So that was a bold move on her part, and I'm thankful for her for taking that chance.
Well, I think she's made a good choice.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time, man. Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast. We believe the best financial advice should always be conflict-free. I'm your host, Casey Smith. Today, I'm joined by 2 guests. We'll start with our external guest, Jason Waters, certified financial planner, also in the Marietta School Board of Education. Hey, Jason.
Hey, how are you?
Glad to have you here with us.
Happy to be here.
And we have our very own Michaela Dowdy here with us today.
Hey, Casey.
So Michaela is a financial planning specialist here at Wiser Wealth Management, and we are happy to have her on our podcast.
Happy to be here.
So today's topic is financial literacy. It's vital for everyone. And Jason, I invited you here today because, the governor in Georgia, we're in one of 13 states now that is going to make it mandatory that high schoolers go through some type of financial literacy class.
Right.
And so we can get back into that here in a second. But why don't we kind of start with, why do we think why is it so important that people be financially literate?
It really impacts your whole life if you don't know how you're starting out in a good spot. I'm really happy the governor signed the legislation into law, and the state board has developed the standards. And so I'm really happy, first of all, that we're going to have this in more schools throughout the state of Georgia. I think some have. I think in Marietta, we've done a pretty good job of teaching financial literacy, but that's not uniform everywhere. And so when there's so many standards pushed down, it's really hard to teach everything that you have to. Why is it important? As a part of my business, outside the school board, I'm in the mortgage business, and I can see from first-time home buyers that are right out of school, their first job, maybe they just got married. People don't understand a lot of times the impact maybe their credit score has, what impact student loans have.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't understand, hey, if I go borrow $100,000 in debt to go to school, but I choose to finance a career that pays me $20,000.
Oh yeah,
it's not going to work. And
Yeah.
so the earlier we can start those things, the better.
Yeah.
Programs like junior achievement and programs that starting as early as kindergarten is fine.
right. I think that the whole. This could be a whole podcast, but I think that the whole system of how we borrow money for education should be changed. Ultimately, there needs to be a disclosure to saying you're going to pay X amount for this education, but based on national data, we expect you to make X amount in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many people get taken advantage of because they think that I'm supposed to go to college and that college is going to give me a 6-digit job. And that's not the case.
No.
If you graduate as a lit major or a history major, you're not making 6 digits. You might have a hard time paying back that undergrad. What if the undergrad was from Harvard?
Sure.
What if the undergrad was from an Ivy League school? The chances of paying that back are just really slim. Well, doctors, they walk out with over $500,000 in debt.
But they also still takes them a while.
It still takes a long time to get it paid back. But there is a future there, or they can find places. Even nurses can find places that will reimburse your expenses. But yeah, it's really sad. I remember we work with a lot of airline pilots, and there was a time period when in the aviation industry things really slowed down. And so if you're in the top 1%, you had a great life, but everyone else was working pretty hard and there wasn't much movement, much progression. So typically you get started at a regional airline, and your first year, it's not this way today, but your first year would be $14,000 a year in pay, but yet you're walking out with $150,000 to $200,000 in student loans.
Long time to pay that off.
These are private loans, and they expect you to start paying back. I counsel so many people that their loan is bigger than their paycheck.
Wow.
And then what happens is they marry each other. They meet each other in school. And so they get married. So you end up with $400,000 in student loan debt, right? And it just never dawned on them. They were just told, oh, no, the airline pilots make a lot of money. And they went with that assumption, never actually investigated this is the path. Would they have still been airline pilots? Absolutely. Would they have done it differently? Yeah. They would have instructed for a lot longer. And they would have earned $1, paid $1, earned $1, paid $1, until eventually they worked their way through the program and graduated with low debt or no debt whatsoever. I'm on the board at Berry College, Board of Visitors. People say, should I go to Berry or should I go to KSU? And I've been asked this many times over the years. And I was like, if you can go to Berry debt-free, you go to Berry. That's the better education, no doubt, than KSU. But I'd rather see you go to KSU and graduate debt-free, ultimately.
Right.
And KSU's come a long way as an institution. Berry still got the edge, I think. Georgia Tech, or should I go to Berry? You should go to both because there's a bridge program. But Tech's a great degree. Is it worth financing 100% of it? I mean, hopefully not. Hopefully you have the Zelle or Hope or something that help you get through that. But yeah, financing education, that's where we should start in high school. That's the class we should be teaching. Because they have all the student loan debt, and yet society has turned back around and said, oh, the student loan debt's terrible. Well, no one put a gun to your head and made you sign the document.
Right.
I think something really, just to chime in on this and say, just as someone who is a recent college graduate, I think something that is so huge when you are leaving high school, college isn't looked at as an investment in your future. It's more so looked at as your next stepping stone and what's expected of you. And I think that is something that we need to get so much more into, really teaching our younger generation that if you don't go to college and you choose to go to a technical school and learn how to weld or learn how to do those different kind of things that aren't normally what you would think is a 4-year institution degree, then that is totally fine. If you're like, if that's what you feel like you want to do and that's what you're excited about, then go and do that, opposed to taking on all this debt because society has told you need to be going to college and you need to be taking on this debt. And I think it's even, you want to go to the best university, and a lot of people, shy away from a state school or shy away from somewhere if they get accepted to a quote unquote better university that has a higher just like prestige to it, simply because, and they'll take on that extra, monetary expense that they have to, just so that they can walk and say, I got accepted to Vanderbilt or I got accepted here. And it is such an honor to be accepted those places. But then on the back end, you're getting the same degree as someone who went to that state university in your hometown.
It's a piece of paper in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things where, pedigree may matter if you want to go work on Wall Street or,
yes,
you want to get in a certain club, but 99% of the people aren't doing that, right? Marietta High School, I'm very excited about our college and career academy. And really the whole school is Marietta High School, a college and career academy. And so it's really the conversations have to start very early with the kid and the parents in terms of, hey, here are the career options you have out there in the trades. I mean, everybody's not going to go to college. Everybody's not meant to go to college. Everybody shouldn't go to college, right? You can do a lot better a lot of times on the trades, just like you're talking about. But that's also part of financial literacy, and teaching people that may have come from generational poverty where their family has never, ever had any money. You have an opportunity through so many of these trades to make more money than anybody in your family ever has. And they don't even know that. So that's the beginning of financial literacy there. This is how much money you can make.
Definitely.
Ultimately, financial literacy, I think, is to protect people from being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
When you think about when you think about all the issues that we have as a society, you think about racial issues, you think about the issues with the one percenters. Remember that a few years back, and everybody's angry at the one percenters. It really comes back down to it. And I had a lady, recently that called in and asked to speak with me, and I got a lot out of this conversation. One was she had 2 jobs working from home. And it's like, this is the new thing now. It's like, everyone wants to work from home because they're working 2 jobs, getting paid $80,000 for each job. Not working 80 hours a week, probably, but I was not there to judge. I was there to help. But ultimately, what I told her was that, look, your entire life that you set up is payments. You have this payment for $19.99. You have this payment for $4.99. You have this house payment for $15.99. You have all these payments that are set up, and we're told, oh, I can make the payments. Or in certain cultures, I have to drive this car to look successful, even though I drive it back to the government projects. Mm-hmm. Right. And ultimately with financial literacy, I think we can set people free because they realize that the bankers, the salespeople, they could care less if you're debt free. They could care less if you're whole financially. What they want to do is move their product, and you have to have the ability to say no and see what your goals are. Like, my goal is to be free of bondage of payments. That's my goal, right? And so I just need a car to get me to work. I don't need a car to show how great I am. My worth is not in a depreciable asset, right? And so if we can teach these high schoolers who are starting to see some of this, because if you talk to them, some of them say, I just want to be rich. I want to be whatever. And it's like this thing out in the future that they want to be, or they want to be like that Instagram person or whatever.
YouTube star.
YouTube star, yeah. Ultimately, if we can show them that, look, the world's a great place, and America is the best place in the world to go and grow and build something. And this is the best country to grind it out in, too. I would not want to be grinding it out in Africa, in Asia, Malaysia, or anywhere, right? I would be grinding it out here. This is the best place to do it, but you have to understand that there's all these flashy objects, and you have to stay a certain course. And most of the world is going to end up old and broke, and living on Social Security. That's the reality. And so, if you want to change that, you can. You don't have to go to college to change that. No. You don't. You just learn how to save money and learn how the system works and how you can make the system work for you. That's what we need to be teaching. Yes, we have to talk about a check and how a credit card works, how a debit card works. When you talk about the stock market and how it works, right? Very few people get rich because they picked this stock and they made all this money. That's not how that works. People get mad at the old white bankers. You know what they're doing? Right. They're selling stuff for $19.99, right? Sure. They have all the subscription programs, and now they've just digitized it. They digitized it. You go into your iPhone, you have all these subscriptions. You can sign up for it.
Yeah, I mean, I can catch myself doing that sometimes, and I'm thinking, like, what is this drafted out of my account? I signed up for something, and I thought it was a trial, right? I mean, we need to add that to financial literacy.
Yes,
definitely.
I have to go 7-day free, and then $50 a year, and then all of a sudden that adds up.
I have to go buy my kids all the time. They sign up for the Apple Games or something. It's like $2.99 a month. I'm like, no, we're not playing games. Go to work. We're not playing games.
I have that issue with Fortnite. What did you buy?
Oh, yes. My 10-year-old, my oldest 17 right now, didn't really ever take to video games whatsoever. He's been a golfer since he was 1.5 years old. He's been in the backyard hitting golf balls. My middle child's all horses. She doesn't even watch much TV really. But my youngest, video games. Yep. Yeah. And he was listening to something recently that I was listening to about cryptocurrency. He's like, "What's cryptocurrency?" You know how I explained it to him? It was V-Bucks.
Yeah.
Because V-Bucks is a lot like a cryptocurrency. It's a currency that works inside this world, and you can buy more. And he's all the time like, "Hey, can I get V-Bucks?" Every time I'm at Kroger, "Can I get V-Bucks? I can get a new skin." I'm like, "No."
The skin, I know.
We are not buying. We're not buying digital clothes for our digital gamer.
Frankly, over the last few months, I would have done better by buying digital clothes as opposed to crypto. So, just say it.
Winning the hearts of your children, maybe. But yeah, I think that it's very important that we teach all the basics. But you know what I get concerned about is how we're going to deliver this. You know, Michaela, you tell me about, you did financial literacy in high school, right?
Yes.
They had a class?
Yes.
Do you know if it was mandatory in Tennessee at the time?
Yes. So it was. I actually looked it up the other day because of this podcast, and I don't know when they exactly put it into mandate, but it is something that is expected out of all of Tennessee for their high school.
And what was your experience?
My experience was interesting. I was taught it by one of our basketball coaches. And so it didn't seem as serious as a thing to take at the time. And it was just kind of like we're here to check it off the box so we can graduate. Right. I took it, I want to say my sophomore or junior year of high school. And at that point, I didn't get
Which was last year?
Yeah.
Michaela's the baby here. No. We have to give her a hard time.
No, it was like 8 years ago. I don't know, 7 years ago. But yeah, so we took it, or we're all in this class, and it was very much like our textbook was out of date. For really, I think what I've realized with our generation is everything got into the digital boom so quickly that honestly, like a textbook for personal finance couldn't keep up with how fast the financial, really just how fast was moving. Yes.
I didn't even know there were textbooks anymore, to be honest.
There were still textbooks then, but I did most of my work on a MacBook, so I can't. So definitely digital age, but really was something that it wasn't necessarily something we felt like we could relate to. And there wasn't this bridge of, you need to know about a loan because one day you're going to buy a house, because that is so far off for high schoolers.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And it's something that you have to really get on their level. And it's really hard to kind of just envision such a big future when all you're thinking about is, I've got to get this ACT score so I can get into this college or something like that. And so you're like, I can't even think about that and really worry about that other than I'm going to learn about it to pass this course. And then it's going to brain dump out the other end. And so I think that that's something that it really is, if we can help high schoolers understand the why. Because I think for me, I didn't understand the why behind why I was learning it at the age I was learning it at. I didn't understand the importance of it. Even growing up in a house that was financially driven and very much finances were a big topic for us, it wasn't something that I still saw as like, I need to know how to do this today. And so I think that that's something that really is just helping people understand the why and helping our high schoolers understand that this is important.
If it was taught by a coach in high school, did he understand finances, do you think?
Who knows, honestly.
That's why I go in. So teachers will have me come in, even though they teach math and they're really good at that. They're like, hey, Jason, will you come in and talk because you have the financial background? So I really think getting people that do the work in the real world coming in is very helpful
to teach the class,
to help. I mean, at least occasionally.
Yeah.
So,
or maybe it's like a corporate sponsorship and people come in and volunteer. I don't know how exactly to solve it. I mean, obviously the mandate is a curriculum. I don't guess they're mandating who teaches it.
That's correct. Yeah, you have the standards, and then we teach the standards. I mean, there's some great partnerships we have going on. For example, we're partnering with a credit union now to bring high schoolers into like a mock teller line, so to know what tellers do at a bank. So many folks don't even go to a bank anymore, right? Because it's all app
Definitely.
on the phone, and that's amazing with like a mortgage side of the business. If you talk to, it's so different generational. So if I'm working with someone that's 60 something and still has a mortgage and they want to refinance, they don't know how to save something as a PDF sometimes. And then when you're 20 something, you don't know how to use a computer. You're trying to send me screenshots from a phone. That also doesn't work. So the world changes so fast. I think on either end, it's hard to keep up.
I wonder, and you may or may not know this, but what's the plan to keep the kids interacting? You know, I mean, have you seen the curriculum? Has anybody seen?
I haven't seen it yet, no.
So, because it doesn't launch till
That
2024,
part's
right?
still me developed. So the standards happen and then the curriculum.
2024 is when this
follows it.
launches?
Correct.
Okay. So they'll be here before you know it, but there's a little ways out. It'll be interesting. You know, Dave Ramsey has curriculum just for that. I don't know if the high school would ever adopt that, being he's faith-based, and I don't know that public schools would do that. But
I've seen a lot of good things happen, even, more secular junior achievement, for example.
Yeah.
And teaching economics and a lot of education world, you talk about what's developmentally appropriate for that age. What's right for a kindergartner, a third grader, fifth grader, high schooler. Yeah. And so, I mean, even my kids, so I know they'll have economics day in elementary school. And so they're learning the value of things, starting in kindergarten. And so, we don't start this just in high school. In Marietta, we start this in kindergarten, and it goes every year. It's part of our whole curriculum already. But like I said, there are a lot of systems that they're not doing that.
I mean, ultimately, it needs to start at home.
Sure.
And that our theme for this quarter has been leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
And we've had different guests on talking about estate planning, talking about family covenant, how to build a legacy, ultimately financial education. And education in general is, to me, how you leave the ultimate legacy is teaching the next generation how to handle money. I don't think most of us were taught. Maybe we watch from a distance. Some families, probably two generations ago, is very secretive. We don't ever talk about finances.
Talk, what do they say? Religion, politics, or am I missing something? Finance.
Right?
And I'm like, what else is there to talk about? Those are the most exciting, in my mind, those are the most exciting things to talk about. I don't want to talk about anything else.
I have a client. I can't remember who it was, though. It's been a few years, but we were talking about this, and they said, do you mind if my daughter comes in for a meeting? And I said, no, I mean, it's fine. Usually daughters or sons come in, when the clients are in their 80s, right? And they're kind of making sure that everybody's, see the big picture, et cetera, et cetera. But he put her in charge of the checking account. Like, he gave her all the bills. He's turned everything over. And he says, look, you're going to do this for the next year before you graduate high school. And you're going to see how much money we make. You're going to see how we pay our bills. And you're be in charge of doing all that.
That's awesome.
And I was like, wow, dang. Now, he didn't really have debt, so to speak. So, maybe there's nothing for him to be embarrassed about or anything like that. But I was like, well, that's kind of my learning style. Throw them in the water, and if they swim, then that's great.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And obviously he was there. He wasn't going to let her screw it up. But so that's the ultimate way to learn how to do this. But not all of us come from stable family backgrounds. And so I think this is a great way to give someone an opportunity to say, okay, my life's going to be different. And I will say the biggest savers, the highest wage earners in our firm under the age of 30, I'd say most of them come from backgrounds that have some adversity. Mm-hmm. And it's because what's interesting to me is they decided for them not to make that the excuse. And they said, I'm not going to live my life that way. I'm going to live my life this way. Almost to the point where I have to tell them to lighten up. Like, you can buy a meal out. It's okay. Right. You don't have to spreadsheet every single thing in your life. Right. And so I think the public school system, what a great way to, if it's executed properly, even if you can capture 4 or 5 out of a class.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. And it's amazing when I've gone and been a guest, speaker at high school, folks that don't know necessarily. I mean, somebody in their family. I mean, I asked them to raise their hand. Do you have a bank account? Most of them don't. right? A lot of them don't. Some people's parents don't have bank accounts. Some people have used check cashing their whole life. Some people don't have credit. They don't understand credit scores and the impact of credit scores and how you're paying more for everything from insurance to your car, everything if your credit's not good. What is it? What is a credit score made of? I mean, all those different things that need to be taught.
Or why you shouldn't even focus on a credit score.
Sure. And that's one thing where I may disagree with Dave Ramsey on, because
you gotta have it to buy the first house. There's a gap there in his advice. I'll acknowledge that.
He's not, ultimately he's not necessarily wrong.
Yeah.
But it's tough for the house, and then
his audience is not the person who's trying to buy their first home. His audience is the people who have already screwed all this up.
That's right.
And they're in their mid-40s trying to crawl out of it for life.
Your credit score also impacts how much you're paying for car insurance.
Yes.
Right. And so that's
true.
where it matters, where it maybe shouldn't matter, but it does.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, there's credit score stuff is almost like voodoo. It is something that I think needs to be changed in how we calculate that.
Sure.
But ultimately, yes, you don't want to take out debt just to maintain a credit score. You want to get it to the point where you don't even care about your credit score. Yeah. And if you don't care about your credit score and you're debt free, your credit score is probably pretty good.
Yeah, probably. Most likely.
Probably don't have to worry about it too much. We have a couple of podcast episodes. One in particular, if you listen back to episode number 46, it's financial terms everyone should know. I think that's kind of our tribute to financial literacy. I think last year when we there's a financial literacy month. Is it January? I think that's when it is. I can't remember which month it is. Maybe January or February. It's the beginning of the year. But we just went through every financial term and what it means. It was me, Brad, and Matthews that did that. Episode 54, hiring the right financial advisor. That's something that I think is hard to do because the financial advisors that are readily available are trying to sell you stuff. Mm-hmm. And we're very passionate about not selling anything other than hourly advice and personal financial management. But so you have to be careful about who you trust, who you go to, certainly in this business. So let's get back to a little bit of talking about people lacking financial literacy. Michaela, you made a note here on our show notes that nearly half of Americans don't expect to have enough money to retire comfortably.
Yes, which is a staggering statistic.
50%.
Yes.
How many people live in this country? A lot.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that off the top of my head.
That's a huge number. That's a huge number.
Which really is, it just goes back to really personal finance is so much behavioral based, and like it really isn't even just the knowledge of finance, but it is behaving in a way that, like you were saying, going beyond that cultural norm of buying the best big thing or buying the next purchase that influencer on Instagram suggested you buy, and those kinds of things. And it's really having to challenge yourself to not break into this, cycle that we have as a society to just spend and consume as much as we can, and really just going and leaning into that budgeting. And that's where all of that is in that core root, an issue of like, we're just overspenders a lot of the time, and it's not understanding. Even a lot of people don't even know how much they're actually netting each month. And I think that's been crazy as we've walked through different, plans with people, and you come in and you ask and you're like, hey, how much do you make a year? And they're like, they can give you the gross amount, but they can't give you the net amount. And it's just really, how do you make a budget when you don't even know how much money is actually coming in? And so I think that that's something that really is so huge for really making sure you have enough for retirement, or even understanding what your 401k plan is at work or your 403b plan is at work, and people not knowing like you can go in and make adjustments to those, and you don't have to be invested in what they invested you in when you first were there, and making those adjustments that are best suited for you. And so, and understanding even when you're applying for jobs, what their benefit of a match is. And I think that that's something that people, try to just slide by of like, that's not really that important, whatever, but it can double what you're contributing.
If we could keep 20-year-olds out of debt and saving at least 10% of what they make, imagine how wealthy this country would be.
Yep, like Japan.
Seriously. I mean, because what do people do when they come out of college? Buy a car.
Yep.
They got monthly car payments. What do they do next?
Buy a house.
Buy a house. Get big car payments or big house.
At least the
payments.
house typically is going to go up in value, right?
Yes.
But,
I'm not arguing the house, and maybe you have to do something to get to work, but you can buy something that's super economical, right? But ultimately, if you can put away 10%, stay away from debt, you can make $60,000, $50,000, $40,000 a year the rest of your life, and you'd be multimillionaire.
Yeah, you don't have to make a lot of money if you don't have debt, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
that's freedom, right? And I think it's really hard for a lot of us. Like, as I'm closer to 50 than 40 now, and I think back, I mean, it's really hard for a 20-year-old or 18-year-old, anyone to grasp. It seems so far away, and it's not. No. And then all of a sudden you've been married 20 years, and all of a sudden your kids are going to high school, and life has flown by, and then we look back, excuse me, where our parents said, "Hey, life goes by fast," and you're like, "No, it doesn't. I've got eternity," and you don't. Yeah, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
No, and the whole time your money's compounding. Well, it's
compounding either way, right?
Right.
The debt, or
Exactly.
time value of money works both ways.
Yes.
Something that's reported, we've talked about it on our podcast before, but credit card debt is now at its highest point ever in the U.S. It's in the, I believe, 16 trillion. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
I think so. Mm-hmm.
Partially, I think that has something to do with wages not increasing as fast as what inflation is.
Yeah.
But still, as a country, we're not reducing our debt. We're actually increasing our debt. 40% of Americans can't afford a $400 emergency expense.
Wow.
This is why financial literacy is so important. It has very little to do with how much you're making, or it has more to do with what you're doing with what you make.
Definitely. I think it's really hard sometimes, even because I think as a younger generation, when I thought of my paycheck, a lot of times I thought of it as my allowance. Mm-hmm. And I think we get trained in like, oh, you did chores for an allowance. And that allowance was your free money. And so you're almost like, I feel like it's really hard to break that mindset of my paycheck is my allowance, of like, oh, I can spend it however I want. And, the money I'm saving isn't going to a piggy bank in my room. It's going into like an actual savings account or a brokerage account or whatever I want to be saving towards 401k. And it's really hard to, I think, break that sometimes because you've grown so accustomed to like, I can spend it on however I want because it's my allowance and I'm allowed to spend it because it's my money. Right. And so I think it's something like even just retraining that mindset, especially for, I think, younger generation of like, hey, you got this allowance. And even starting like with a parent at home being like, hey, you have this allowance, but you know what? I saw it on probably Facebook the other day where it was like, I'm going to take 10% of that and it's going to go to your savings account, or it's going to go to your college fund. Yeah. And then I'm going to take another little bit of that and it's going to go towards taxes, just to like show like that to them so early on at like a 9-year-old, whoever, whenever they're starting to do chores. And not that that's fun for your kid to have to look at and they're probably going to roll their eyes, but it really is preparing them for the real world in a lot of ways.
We tried that with our kids when they were little. I tried it. You have to have lots of perseverance and lots of discipline because we had 3 jars temporarily. It would lasted for like maybe 3 months and then it just
ours lasted
kind
for
of
3 weeks.
But it's like the spend, give, and save jar. And then when you get money, this is what you put in. Then when you go to church on Sunday, you give the give, and then we tried that. But man, it's so easy. We live in such a fast paced world now. That we failed miserably. My only hope, my hope is in Dave. My only hope right now is, we've talked about this before on the podcast, but my daughter needs a ridiculously expensive saddle to move up to the next level of her horse world. And I told her that was ridiculous. And then her trainer's like, no, she's jumping really high jumps. She's moving really fast. You need something that's going to keep her on better. And I was like, okay. They kind of know with me, if it's anything with safety, I'll spend the money. But if it's not safety oriented, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But so I think she's about a little over halfway now through her Dave Ramsey for teen course. And it's a whole semester's worth of work. I took the money that I was spending on the saddle. She had to work volunteer 20 hours. I think she's about 8 hours into that. And then she had to take this course. And the course is, I think it's $25. You can do it through a self-study. She does a lot of it on her phone. She watches these videos. She has to take these little tests at the end. There's a middle school version and there's a high school version. So she's a freshman. I just went ahead and gave her the high school version. But you can find it on Dave Ramsey's website. We could probably link that in the show notes, Hadley, as well. And so, if you have an incentive, if you can kind of get your kids to, if they want something, say, okay, I'm going to do this for you. For my son, I gave him a big number. I said, hey, your sister's taking this course. If you want to take this course too, I'll pay you X amount. And he's like, what? I was like, I'll pay you X amount. He hasn't started the course yet, which is, being a boy, sort of understandable. And I really should have hit him up sooner in the summer, where I'm hit him up kind of late. So now he's back into the school year, and school's, junior year for him. It's got a pretty heavy load, but so you can try that. I would say for any of you who are adults or listening, you go, maybe I should be taking a financial literacy course. They have it for self-study as well for you. There's an adult course. It's $80 on Dave Ramsey's website. We can link to that as well. And most importantly though, is teaching your kids how to be good with money. Mm-hmm. Because you look around us and it's just complete, especially I feel like in Atlanta, there's this complete financial destruction, and it's self-destruction in most cases. Nobody's pushed into their situation. They choose to live that way, or they don't know the difference. Yeah. So I'm hoping that through these high school programs that we're going to have teachers that are really passionate about changing people's lives.
Yeah, I hope so. We're going to need to teach the teachers, right? So there's going to have to be a program. So this is what you need to know, right? Because it's going to be new for some of those folks too.
Now, you said Marietta Schools was already doing some things. Do they measure success at all? Or do they say, we feel like that we made this kind of impact through this program?
The thing I can tell you is from the College and Career Academy standpoint, in terms of how many kids get placed into certain jobs, and that's relatively new. So we launched the College and Career Academy, built the new expansion of our building, converted to the high school to be a College and Career Academy, and then COVID hit. And then there's 2 years, so I think we're going another year or two down the road to see how things are working. I can tell you that we're really focused on the partnerships with the businesses out there. So local construction companies, plumbing companies, and so I don't think I have those numbers for you right now. Okay, but
those
call me this spring.
But those are placements. They got jobs. That's great. But then what do they do with the nickel that they're earning?
Once people leave us, they're. Yeah, nobody comes and self-report to say, hey, by the way, I screwed it up.
Maybe that's part of the program. Maybe you keep in touch and they can come back and be part of a class somehow of educating others. Yeah. It's definitely a passion. I've met a few Barry students over the years that have a really big passion of educating others about money, because it's not just poor, middle class, or wealthy that have advantage over each other when it comes to knowledge. It's all pretty an equal playing field, and they all equally screw it up. I've seen people blow through really big trust funds.
100%. 100%.
I've seen poor people end up doing very, very well, better than those that had all the access in the world. It just really comes down to education and what you do with your own self and how you conduct your own self in the end. And sometimes we need help getting a leg up, but I think that's what this program is. I think that's what, I don't know. I didn't talk to the governor about it before he agreed to sign, but my thought is, this is really important. We're going to teach these people, and let's be passionate about it, and let's go after one person at a time. But ultimately, it comes down to the teacher.
Yeah, agreed.
God bless those teachers. Okay, well, I think we've covered this. I can't think of anything else to add to this topic. But thank you guys for coming on and indulging me as we talk about financial literacy, and hopefully our listeners will find ways to make impact either in their own families or to nieces and nephews and cousins, etc.
Sure.
And let's keep people off all the payment plans. No more payment plans.
Agreed.
Yes.
And subscriptions.
Yes, and subscriptions. Exactly. All right. See you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening, that way you don't miss any new episodes. We would also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. We would love to hear from you. This episode was produced and edited by Lilton Moore.